Mr. Brown.
Dr. McIntyre, what do you consider a successful teacher?
I'm sorry?
What do you consider a successful teacher to be?
In what regard?
Generally. What does it take?
So you're talking about a philosophical discussion you'd like to have about what I believe is successful.
What would be
teacher.
the top three key points that a good teacher should have?
I believe a good teacher provides high-quality instruction to students and leads them to high-level learning and student success. I think there's a variety of measures for success for teachers, but I think they really revolve around making sure that we support, develop, grow, teach, help our students to learn.
Why is it that the only people get promoting to principals are ones that have gone through your little academy?
That's actually not correct, Commissioner.
Appears to be, from what I'm hearing. And I talk to a lot of teachers.
Okay, but it's objectively, demonstrably not correct.
Would you consider a teacher of 23 years
experience? I just appointed Mr. Jason Webster as the head principal of Gibbs High School. He has not gone through. I can cite many examples.
Would you consider a teacher of 23 years experience, 9 of them as an assistant principal, 14 in the classroom with good evals, a candidate for principal?
I really think it depends on the individual and the work that they've done and the skills that they have. I think that's a very important question, and it's one that I take very seriously. I not only appoint all of our head principals, I interview all of our assistant principal candidates, all of our administrative assistant candidates, because that's one of the most important things that I do, is make sure that we have great leadership at the helm of each and every one of our schools. That's a responsibility that I take very seriously, and one that I spend a great deal of time making sure that we have the right candidates who have the right skill set and the right fit for each of our appointments for head school principals and assistant principals as well.
What happens if they don't buy into every little bit of your philosophy? They don't get the job, right?
If they don't buy into my philosophy?
Yeah.
No, sir. I think that that we want to make sure that principals have, that candidates for the principalship have the skills and knowledge and competencies that they need to be effective leaders, and to make sure that students are learning and growing and prepared for a bright, competitive, and successful future. It's not about my philosophy. It's about working toward our goals as a school system, working toward what our community expects in terms of high-quality education and excellence in the classroom.
But you also have teachers with less than 5 years experience as evaluators going out here and evaluating teachers who've got 20, 25 years experience too, don't you?
Commissioner, there are many cases where experience leads to more effective teaching, but there are some instances where that is not the primary factor in whether or not a teacher is an effective teacher or not. We have some really outstanding teachers who have 5 or 10 years of experience, and we have some teachers who are not as effective who have 30 or 40 years of experience. I'm not sure that's the primary determining factor.
If you were a teacher in a classroom and you had them hounding you day after day, how could you keep your mind on teaching the subject you were supposed to be teaching, and with Big Brother looking over your shoulder every move you made? I mean, would you feel comfortable doing the job under those circumstances?
As we've discussed in this forum in the past, our intention and in putting forth and meeting the requirements for performance evaluation under the statute in the state of Tennessee is we want it to be a developmental process. We want to help our teachers get better at what they do. We want to have a growth mindset where we're constantly thinking about how we get better at what we do. And that's really the perspective that we try to bring to the evaluation process, that it's about continuous improvement. It's about great instructional practice. It's about making sure our kids are learning and getting a great education. And that's the perspective with which we come to the evaluation process.
Well, I don't know this, Sheila Earl, but as a Knox County citizen, would you find out why what happened to her and get back with me? Is that confidential information?
Well, yeah, it's a personnel action that we took, and there may be some confidential information involved in that.
Well,
but,
every one of those files over there are open to the public. Even these guys sitting down here can go over there and get those files.
Absolutely.
I'm asking you to get back with me and let me know why this happened to this lady.
And several of them have.
Pardon?
I said several of them have looked at Ms. Earl's file.
Well, you're not answering my question. Will you look into this and get back with me and tell me why this happened?
Commissioner, if you'd like to have a conversation about it, I'm glad to do that. But again, I will have to respect the confidentiality of those.
You can call me. You don't have to come back up
aspects of the personnel record that are confidential.
Well, you don't have to come back up here. You can call me and tell me my answer to my
Sure.
my
Yeah,
question.
if you'd like to sit down and talk about it, glad to do it.
Commissioner Norman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. McIntyre. A couple of questions. First, I guess, do we have plans to go on with this, Chancery Court?
Do we have plans to go on with what?
With Mr. Suttle's case to challenge the appeal in Chancery Court?
I don't believe I will move forward with an appeal to Chancery Court.
And why would you not do that?
I believe we've come to a point where, the Board of Education has, I think, made a decision, and I'm willing to live with that.
Why are you willing to challenge the third-party hearing officer's contention?
Well, first of all, Mr. Chairman, we've been at this for quite a while, and the termination of teachers under Tennessee statute is given exclusively. The power and authority is given exclusively to local boards of education. So I do fail to see how this is appropriate business before the county commission. But I'm glad to answer whatever questions I can.
Are you going to provide us with the cost when
I would say that several of our school board members have expressed considerable concern about this particular item being on your agenda today, because it is within their purview and not within yours. However,
are you going to respond to that? Are you going to respond to the cost issue for this episode with Mr. Suttle?
You have said that you're going to send me a letter. I'm glad to see what that letter has.
So you think that if I request direct, indirect cost estimates, accounting, you'll be able to supply that?
I certainly do my best to be responsive to your request. Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. One thing to Dr. Briggs there before I forget, I would like to add that, yes, we do meet the statutory requirements for evaluations for the state of Tennessee, but there are substantial differences in terms of what Knox County actually does and also in how those results are interpreted. There are substantial.
One more question. Can I ask one more question about that? Is this a standard thing we're using, or is this a homemade evaluation system we have, or I'm asking, I don't know.
You mean the rubric?
Somebody has to say it.
No, it's not. I'm not going to say it. I'll say it. No, Commissioner, it is actually the default model for teacher performance evaluation in the state of Tennessee. The Tennessee Department of Education entertains waivers to do different models that meet the statutory requirements, but this is the default model for the teacher evaluation for the state of Tennessee.
I'm learning. I'm not taking sides.
Sure.
What do we do differently in Tennessee than the default model?
I don't have all those details right here, and so I don't want to misstate that. I think I see Ms. Asher right here, and she's going to either write an article or be right. She's already written an article about that, but I don't have all those details. But what I remember, and we all experienced this at our board, school board, and the what do we call that?
Kumbaya.
Retreat. Yeah, Kumbaya. What was it?
Retreat.
Officially. Retreat. So we had a representative from another system, and we were talking about evaluation. What clearly came through there was the totally different environment which teachers experience in other systems compared to us. Have the same, fundamentally the same system, but it's how you do it. It's the climate, it's the culture that is employed in Knox County, which makes it so different, in my opinion. But I just wanted to say one other thing and ask Dr. McIntyre one other thing, and that's it. The end of this process seemed to be orchestrated by the principal and assistant principal, Lynn Hill, and a Mr. Crockett, I believe was his name. I am curious about, well, I'm not expecting an answer right now, but I do wonder about what is now, given the outcome and all of this tremendous time and expense, what is going to happen with them? I hope certainly they're evaluated. The look that goes towards them is at least as intense as is going towards Mr. Suttle. And then my last question for you, Dr. McIntyre, is I'd like for you to make some kind of comment about Mr. Suttle's assignment as a PE teacher.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really not inclined to discuss the placement of our teachers, but I will say this because you've asked why I appealed the hearing officer's decision to the Board of Education, and part of the reason is I thought the record actually was fairly clear that showed that Mr. Suttle was an ineffective teacher, as outlined in Tennessee state statute, and also that the hearing officer found that Mr. Suttle was guilty of conduct unbecoming the teacher profession, which is reasonable cause for termination in the state of Tennessee. But the hearing officer decided, in his ruling, in his the way he laid out the case, that while that is a cause for termination, it wouldn't be his recommendation. This is a unique case in that we typically don't have and can't talk about teacher growth scores, TVOS scores. But because Mr. Suttle appealed the hearing to the Board of Education, his are actually now part of the public record. And what you see when you look at the 800 pages of documentation is that Mr. Suttle had, at the end of 2012, had a 3-year composite TVOS score of negative 4.02. Negative 4.02. That not only puts him on the extreme far end of low performance of teachers in Knox County, but on the extreme low end of performance of teachers across the state of Tennessee. Mr. Suttle had multiple years of performance evaluations where he did not meet expectations, and he was recommended for termination by his principal. So I felt, based on those facts and based on the enormous volume of information that's in the record and in the file, that pursuing termination in this case was the right thing to do for the children of Knox County, for our students. And, stood by that decision. The hearing officer overturned that decision, and the Board of Education affirmed the hearing officer's decision. And I'm willing to live with that. And we will place Mr. Suttle in a position where he will, that is in one of his areas of certification, and but where he will not be in a subject area where he scored a negative 4.02 composite TVOS score.
I think